Hey guys, so I wanted to make a video. I'm sure I've made a video about this before, but this is something that I think needs to be repeated over and over so that as many people as possible don't miss this, because depending on how you look at this, one particular thing in Neville Goddard's writing, you will have a completely different approach to basically everything that has to do with people. And so I want to explain what Neville means when he says people can only show up the way you assume that they will. People seem to have taken this to mean that you completely control other people, and that if you just think hard enough about somebody being a certain way, that they will show up that way, and that's basically a cast iron rule. People are a figment of your imagination, and you control exactly what they think. I mean, I've seen videos on here saying people can only think what you decide they can think. Now, I think this is good, probably because it weeds out people that are insane from people that aren't. Like, I'm not sure what frame of mind you have to be in to just buy into that hook, line, and sinker. You basically would have to give no validity to your own human experience up to this point, because you can almost certainly come up with a million ways that interpretation is simply false, like in 30 seconds. Or I guess you have to be really, really excited about the idea of controlling other people. That's not what Neville meant by that. And the way that you know it's not, aside from hopefully it not passing the sniff test in your own personal experience, the way that you can prove to yourself that isn't what he meant is by reading all of his works and taking it in the greater context of everything he said. And there is one big thing. There's a thing that I've seen posted over and over again on the forums about what did Neville mean by this. There's a passage in one of Neville's books where he basically says, be careful what you wish for other people, because they can only take on something that he uses terminology like something they would wish true of another or something, but basically there's this sort of muddy wording that doesn't make a lot of sense unless you're looking at it from exactly the right angle. You know those art installations where if you look at them straight on, it doesn't look like anything, but then you move 30 degrees to, if you move over to the side a little bit and all of a sudden there's a picture there. That's a lot of stuff that Neville said requires a shift in the way you're viewing it to understand what it means and be able to use it. And what he means by basically the other person has to accept the thing that you imagine of them in order to be that thing. What he's saying is essentially the world is your mirror, and people will reflect to you what you think and believe. But if they can't, they cannot show up. So basically, they can only show up the way you assume them to be. And if they can't, then they will not show up at all. That's sort of like the little part at the end that's left off that you have to kind of put together from life experience and reading all of his stuff. A lot of people I don't think have even read anything. I think like 95% of the people that discuss Neville have actually not read anything other than like the excerpts that people have posted. His stuff is all free, and there's a lot of it. And the more you get into it, the more and more you read, the more everything he's saying gels and makes sense, and you realize he didn't contradict himself anywhere. You just have to be coming at it from the right angle to understand it. All the mystics do this. That's why if you read if you read a book when you're 20 and then you read it again when you're 30 and you read it again when you're 40, and I'm guessing 50, 60, 70, that it'll look different to you. It'll seem different. It'll feel like it was written by a different person, like it's something you never read before. So when it comes to controlling other people, I've made a lot of videos on this lately, but it's really not about anyone else. It's about you. And when you decide how you're willing to be treated by people and what types of relationships you're willing to have, what will happen is the existing relationships that you have will change as much as they can to conform to that. And the ones that simply can't will be gone, because by your simple decision to only allow certain types of things into your life because of the value that you put on yourself and your experience and all of that, you will elect to not have certain relationships in your life anymore, or they will just take off. You know, I have a good example of this. I've talked about in the beginning of this channel. I had this friend. There was this, you know, this guy friend that was like, it was this romantic bullshit relationship. That's where I've landed on it. It was a romantic bullshit relationship. And that I'm not blaming him. It was absolutely a two-way street. It always is. But eventually, within the context of this relationship, it started off with me in a really bad place, and it ended up with me basically where I am right now in terms of, you know, my viewpoints on relationships and how I feel about myself in relation to them, and how I feel about myself in relation to everything else, which has changed dramatically between the middle of 2019 and the end of 2019. And that relationship changed with it as much as it could. And eventually it didn't belong with me anymore. And what had happened was with the end of that, I don't think I've ever talked about that here. You know, I had kind of landed on, this person's very important to me, but, you know, I don't want to be in a romantic relationship with him, but he's very important to me, and he's my friend, and, you know, I want to move forward and continue to know this person. Like, I want this person in my life. And, you know, that was where I was coming at it from. Like, the romantic thing, no. But being friends, absolutely yes. You know, that's where I ended up. And he just took off. He just, when I started dating somebody else, he just left. He just, you know, he put up this facade that he was coming over to pick up some stuff that he had left over in my condo during lockdown. And, you know, I was like, oh, go ahead. He had keys to my apartment. I'm like, go ahead and just come in and get your stuff. And he's like, well, I haven't seen you in so long. Could you be there? I just want to, you know, like, see you in person. And I was like, okay. I needed to be at work doing something, but I was like, okay. So I stayed at home. I met with him, and he basically said, do you know what this is? We're never going to talk again. Like, this is good. You know, this big dramatic, like, breakup type of thing. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, like, we have a valuable relationship. This is my good friend. This is somebody I can count on. We've been through all this stuff together. Like, we spent lockdown together. We've had this, like, and that person was not able to fit into the new state of my life. And now, you know, with like almost 2 years behind, a year and a half since then, I can clearly see that it was a total dream in my mind that he was a match for anything in my life. But so he just dramatically took off one day, like, with no warning. And so, like, that's how it happens sometimes. Like, I didn't have to be like, get out of my life. I just had to exist in this state of having, you know, high standards for what I was willing to have in my life. And the person that couldn't meet up to the high standards of their own volition just bolted and has been gone. I mean, he texted me a couple times after that, and that was it. Like, I never responded to the last one because I was kind of offended by the way the whole thing went down, and realized he really didn't belong in this picture, and I'm with somebody else now. And it's just, you know, so he's gone because he can't show up the way I would want him to, which is as a, you know, person that is beyond where he currently was at that time. You know, no, I'm not trying to throw any shade at him, because I knew him pretty well, and I, you know his whole bag of, like, issues and everything, which I sympathize with, and I wish him nothing but the best. But you know what I mean? Like, it's just this energetic balance that will always be seeking to just equalize. And these people that are not in the right place to fit into your picture will just not be there if they can't be, you know? And if they can, they will rise to the occasion. I've talked about my mom on here a couple times. I have just seen some majorly weird, like, my mom has really kind of had a shift in the way she views a lot of things since I had this shift in 2019, which is really interesting. She seems, since I got to a point where I was accepting myself a lot more, she seems to have kind of followed suit in a way. She said some things that have really surprised me lately. I was talking about how my house is just a total disaster because we moved in January and there's still shit everywhere. It's my busy time at work at the beginning of the year. So like, I was kind of like just putting, we made like some livable areas, like the bedroom is clean and the living room area is like tidy and clean, but like there's just shit everywhere. And my mom was asking me about it and I said, oh my God, you would die. Like my house is such a mess. She hasn't been there since January. I was just like, you would die, because my mom is like a total neat freak, everything in its place. And I expected her to give me some kind of like response, like, what? Oh, you should, I expected some kind of like typical response that I would get from her. And she said, well, if it's okay with you, it's okay with me. And I was just like, oh, what? Like that is, I mean, blown away. Like that attitude is a 180. It's just people just change. I can't really go into it further than that because I don't fucking know, they just respond to you. But if they can't, they will be gone. This is not about controlling other people. It's definitely not about other 3D avatars can only think what your 3D avatar has decided they can think. Like this is officially cuckoo town stuff. And if you read that stuff and don't, kind of like get excited by it, I don't know. I guess everybody enjoys spending a little time in fantasy land. But sadly, that is not Neville Goddard. Neville Goddard is change yourself, and others will follow suit. They will show up as you assume them to be. Don't think that they're going to show up being a jerk. See them in a lovely way. See everyone in your life as being the best that they can be and everything being wonderful. And if they can't live up to that, they will just, they will just not be around when you are, and they will, you'll just find that they're not there anymore. They'll leave, or you'll just say, I'm done with this, or something like that. It's a law. It always works that way. You can count on it. One thing I like to relate this to in a way is Nanny 911. It's not a perfect example, but it's an interesting one. If you've ever watched that show, you will see the behavior of these children who, if comparing, I think looking at this in terms of children makes it really obvious, because children are less governed by ego. They have less personality in place. They're kind of just like a really interesting, they play this out really obviously, this type of stuff. They'll reflect you, that's why when you see a kid that's a nightmare, you're like, something, it's not the kid, it's the reflection. They're reflecting what's going on at home. And Nanny 911 is a great illustration of this. They, if you've never seen the show, it's basically these unruly kids. Parents called the show for help. They send out this like seasoned nanny. And within a few days, the kids are like these perfect little angels, because they are interacting with this strong, stable person that knows how to handle them, that knows what they need, that has boundaries in place. It's not a free for all. There's structure, and these kids just whip into shape immediately. And then the nannies talk to the parents, and the parents are always a complete fucking mess. Like they just don't know what the hell they're doing. And usually the nannies can hopefully like help the parents a little bit too. But just the change in the behavior in the kids, reflecting this one person's energy versus their nightmare parents' energy, that is a perfect example of what people are doing with you all the time and what you're doing with them. It's everyone is you pushed out, that's everyone is you pushed out. Everyone is doing that. So, okay, I think I've talked about this enough. Have a great day.